There's a moment a lot of people reach eventually. It usually happens after years of working, paying, doing what you're supposed to do. You hear someone say something like, "I don't really pay tax like that." And for a second, you pause. Because you realize they're not cheating. They're not doing anything illegal, they're just playing a different game. This episode is about that moment. The moment you realize the tax system doesn't treat work and wealth the same way. And it never really has. Work is visible, it has hours, pay slips, employers, a paper trail. That's why work is easy to tax. The system doesn't need to chase it. It doesn't need to guess. It doesn't need to interpret much. Work shows up every month, more or less on its own, so the system starts there, before the money reaches you, before it feels like yours. That isn't an accident. It's efficient. Wealth works differently. It doesn't arrive monthly, it doesn't clock in, it doesn't sit neatly on a payslip. Wealth moves slowly, quietly, often without anyone really noticing. Through property, shares, assets, dividends, things that grow over time. Wealth doesn't need to work to grow. And because it doesn't move like work, it's harder to tax. Not impossible, just inconvenient. This is where the rules start to split. If you earn money by working, it's taxed as income. If you earn money by owning something that goes up in value, it's treated differently, as a capital gain. And capital gains are taxed lower, not because they're morally better, but because they're politically sensitive. Capital can move, labor usually can't. If a worker leaves, they lose their income. If capital leaves, governments lose leverage. So capital is handled carefully. Dividends are another example. They're described as returns, passive, almost effortless, as if the money just happens. But dividends are still income. They're just income that doesn't look like work, and they're taxed more gently. Because dividends don't cause the same pressure wages do. You don't strike over dividends. You strike over work. Corporations take this even further. They don't really live where you live, they live where it's cheapest to exist. They move profits across borders the way water finds gaps. Quietly, legally, by design. Because tax systems are mostly national, but corporations are global. And global power negotiates. Local workers just comply. Then there's VAT, probably the most efficient tax there is. You pay it without thinking. Every time you spend. Which means the less you earn, the more of your income it quietly takes. Not because it's evil by design, but because it's simple. And inside big systems, simple usually wins. So why doesn't this lead to constant outrage? Because the system doesn't need you to like it. It just needs you to accept it as normal. And most people never see the comparison clearly enough to question it. Work feels personal. Wealth feels distant. Until one day it doesn't. And that's when something clicks. The real divide isn't left and right. It isn't workers versus bosses. It's income versus ownership. And the moment you stop earning and start owning, the rules change. Quietly, legally, systematically. This episode isn't about blaming wealth, it's about understanding design. The system doesn't really reward effort, it rewards position. And once you understand that, something shifts. You stop measuring your worth by how hard you work. You start asking different questions about ownership, about power, about why the rules feel so different at the top. That's where clarity starts. If episode 1 explained why work feels wrong, episode 2 explains why the rules change. This channel is called Cognory. Here we look at the systems that quietly shape how we work, how we think, and how life ends up feeling. No shouting, no slogans, no pretending it's simple.